you mentioned that in the rise of the Nazi Party, you'd have those on the communist side of the coin believing that it was ideology and ideology alone that had duped the German people to choose that direction instead of the path towards a communist utopia. This seems to be something that is ascribed to anything which doesn't really go in the direction, but the leftward direction, as it were. You tend to find people talking about whether it's the vote for Brexit, the vote for Trump, the vote for anything that is then smeared as populist, that effectively it's the false consciousness argument, right? No one knows what they're voting for. They've been duped. And if only we could show them the way, then they would vote the right way.
Yeah, it's a very elitist thing in many ways. I often joke to the students at Grove that nobody has disappointed the left more consistently over the years than the working class. They never do what the middle class intelligentsia think they should be doing. There's a very paternalist dimension to it. And of course, this is one of the ironies of critical theory, that certainly in its Marxist form, it does have a conception of the truth. If you look at George Lukács on truth, say, well, the truth lies in the future. An idea is true if it moves you in the right direction towards the utopia. It's nothing to do with the referential nature of truth or the coherence of truth. It's all to do with the political direction that it drives. And of course, in order to know it's going in the right political direction, you actually have to have some idea of what the truth is. You have to have some idea of what justice in the utopia will mean, even if you say that all forms of justice here and now are ineradicably and irredeemably corrupt. So there's something of a sleight of hand, but it ends up as a kind of form of Gnosticism on this level, that you have the illuminated ones who have the truth, and you have the poor benighted rabble who are just the hapless dupes of the culture around them. So yes, it is very condescending on that level. And you see that in a lot of the political rhetoric that surrounds it as well.
We've started to talk about the concept of truth and how it is woolly, to say the least, within the critical theorist's worldview. And whilst I think it's probably clear what my leanings might be, for the sake of giving it a fair hearing, I do actually think that philosophical methods, they all contain some element of truth. There could be a way to an overarching truth. The problem comes when it's the only lens that you look through, which I think is the where people fall foul when they apply critical theory. But let's explore the truth. So what truths, by your reckoning, are contained within critical theory?
Yeah, I mean, there's some fairly obvious ones. I mean, one of the things that Theodor Adorno explores really in very great depth is what he calls the culture industry. And there's no doubt that the products of popular culture, they're not neutral. They shape the way we imagine the world to be. They shape the way we think about the world. And often they are presented in a particular way that conforms to a certain agenda. I've used gay marriage in the past as an example. I'd say, the shift in the West on the attitude towards gay marriage was not the result of arguments, by and large. It was the result of pop cultural presentations of homosexuality and gay partnerships. That's not making a pro or con gay marriage argument, by the way. That's merely making the observation that the way most people think about gay marriage is an intuitive one, shaped by the products of culture. Secondly, I think there's clearly there's a obvious truth to the fact that we often ascribe power to things that in themselves don't have power. The Old Testament calls it idolatry. The ancient Israelites set up a golden calf and worship and declare that this is the God. These are the gods that brought you out of Egypt. We can certainly, when you think about, for example, the language of the economy, used by politicians all the time, the demands of the economy are. Well, the question, of course, is what is the economy? You can't put it in a test tube and boil it. You can't slice it up and see what's on the inside. You can't drive to it and look at it in a cage. The economy is, in some ways, a construct. It's a term we use for covering and indeed simplifying a whole variety of very, very complex human relationships. But it's more than just a descriptive term. It takes on a life of its own. So you say, well, I've got to lay off 50% of my workforce because the economy demands it. That's an interesting term. We're ascribing personhood and a command to the economy at that point. So I think critical theorists also make us aware of the way we use language and how language that can emerge to do one thing can kind of take on a life of its own and do another. We can start to think of people as things. Again, I'm not a Marxist at all, but I think a writer like George Lukács makes a good point when he says, that one of the problems with modern industrialization is you end up treating people just like things. The machine breaks down, so you replace the fan belt with another fan belt. You have a workforce, but you don't care about the individuals in your workforce. One worker gets sick, you fire him and replace him with another one. That tendency to think about people as things. So there are various aspects of critical theory that I think at a descriptive level are onto something. The real problem with critical theory, of course, is that you can't, a true critical theorist would say you can't separate the descriptive from the revolutionary and the transformative. As soon as you make that separation, you're just doing a form of what they would call traditional theory. You're describing the world. You're not seeking to change it. So Lukács would say, yes, it's true that telling people you're a member of the workforce, but your boss treats you like he treats a widget or a cog or a fan belt. You don't just tell them that in order to highlight a truth to them. You tell them that to make them angry so that they will rise up and do something about it.